Welcome to Out of the Blue number 214. So, I have to address something I've been seeing now. I see now in the news today. Here is the Washington Post saying, and let me get a date on this, December 2nd at 12:49. That's today. That's today, this afternoon. Yes, says the Washington Post, you can blame millennials for Hillary Clinton's loss. Now that's really curious because I've had a sense that there's been a finger waiting to point who's to blame, because there's a lot of people who felt really burned on election day, and I was one of them. And when you get slapped across the face like that or punched in the gut like that, it really takes you back, and you just step back and you try to figure out, how did that happen? And why was it such a shock? And the reason it was such a shock is because I was following the news and I was reading credible news sources. And the credible news sources, being the Washington Post and the New York Times, told me that Hillary had an 80% or better chance of winning. So when I started watching the election day, I thought I was going to be watching history being made. And of course, that is what happened, but it didn't go the way I had expected. But it was so shocking. And it was so shocking because I believed the Washington Post. And if you read this article where it says the millennials are to blame for Hillary's loss, it says younger voters, perhaps assuming that Clinton was going to win, migrated to third-party candidates in the final days of the race. Well, okay, so the younger voters, now millennials, I'll make clear, I am a Generation Xer, I am not a millennial, but I see the Washington Post pointing the finger at the millennials. And I'm saying to the Washington Post, A, you smelt it, you dealt it. You denied it, you supplied it. I see you pointing this finger at these kids, and I see three fingers pointing right back at you. You, Washington Post, are the culprit. You have outed yourself as an unreliable source of news. We are now in this new world where the New York Times and the Washington Post are no longer credible news sources. The Washington Post knows this and is looking to put the blame on someone else. So they're blaming the millennials, but all the millennials did was believe what you said. Okay, you deceived me. And I, in my mind, kind of pointed it generally at the media, or not, but my specific media tastes were I thought, the more credible sources. New York Times, Washington Post, those are the top papers, right? No longer. Now you are deceivers who are pointing the blame on somebody else, okay? We, meaning us Generation Xers and the millennials, believed you. You lied to us. So don't go pointing any fingers at anybody else. And it's too late to even take credit for it now, because now, starting today, you started blaming other people for what you did. Washington Post. So now you can't be taken seriously. You've put yourself in this subcategory of questionable news sources. And so now I have to wonder, what's the good news source? And it's looking like the Financial Times. The Financial Times, I'm going to start reading tomorrow the Financial Times, because the Financial Times the polls they posted before the election turns out to be the accurate polls. Anyway, enough of the rant. I want to show the shirt I'm wearing. And Lives. Prefontaine was an outstanding track and field star. And when they say lives, that's figurative. That is not literal. Figurative because Pre is dead. And why is Pre dead? How did Pre die? Pre died in a drunk driving accident. Pre was drunk and he flipped his car and died and broke his mother's heart and broke the heart of the entire track and field society. And he was such an inspirational character that his spirit still lives. But sadly, his body does not. So don't drink and drive. Welcome to Out of the Blue, number 214.